we find companies doing a variety of things to pull cash, both from their existing operations by managing their working capital better, as well as building new relationships with banks in order to get loans that were previously difficult for them to access because they had not had those relationships. They're also looking to tax savings as an area where they can find refunds. For example, a lot of companies may have paid a lot of indirect taxes, value-added taxes, incorrectly in various states, and there's probably a lot of ad valorem taxes for which they can get refunds. So a wide variety of strategies underway today to extract cash. What are companies doing wrong? I'll say, the first thing I'd say is I think many companies are doing many of the right things in terms of reducing discretionary costs. But I think one of the things we've learned when we looked at history and the companies that sort of came out of recessions well, they kept their core strategy operating over an extended period of time. And when they did cost cutting, they did not go about broad cost cutting and setting targets for reducing the workforce by 10% or 20% sort of indiscriminately. What they did was they sort of used a selective scalpel in cost cutting, preserving the assets that were going to be really vital to grow when they came out of the recession, while taking out the assets that were not going to be as important for them post-recession. So, I think the key thing for companies to do well and managers to do well is to be very selective in their cost cutting and very discriminate in how they think about it. Well, I think we're in a very bifurcated economy, and it's bifurcated by the relative cost of capital for companies that have very high credit ratings and good balance sheets have very low cost of capital, which means they can go out and raise more capital quite easily, put new bond issues in the marketplace. And we have actually seen that, especially in the high-tech industry. And what it means for those who don't have good balance sheets or over-leveraged is they have a much higher cost of capital. Until September 15th of last year, in some ways, the cost of capital was not as much of a strategic differentiator. Today, it is the differentiator. Those companies who have low cost of capital will be coming out sooner or later and going after the critical assets they want to purchase during this time period. And those companies that have a very high cost of capital, unfortunately, are going to have to figure out how are they going to compete versus those who can invest and improve during this period when their cost of capital puts them at a natural disadvantage. Well, when they don't think long term, I think they potentially forego the opportunity of really growing and succeeding as you come out of the recession. It's very likely they will make indiscriminate cuts in the short run to sort of bring costs into alignment with the current realities, but in the process really cut down on all the options for the future that will be vital to their growth. So I think one has to balance the long term with the short term. And what we have seen about winning companies who have repeatedly performed in multiple recessions is they stuck with a strategy, and that was a successful strategy in a balanced way. They never sort of forego the future. They think about the future and make the critical acquisitions, the critical investments in innovation that they need to do, even during a downturn. In fact, sometimes it's cheaper and easier to do so. I think there are a number of things that are going to matter. The first thing, obviously, we talked about cost of capital. And the world is going to continue where there is going to be differentiated cost of capital for companies with different qualities in their balance sheets. And so those companies with cheaper capital will have a competitive advantage vis-a-vis their competitors. And CFOs are right at the heart of fixing the balance sheets and the capital structure. Then the second thing that will occur post-recession is those companies who navigated the recession and continue to make selective investments in the innovations and the products that are vital to their customers, and maybe even expanded geographically to Asia and the future markets that they're going to have to grow in, will be in a better position than the companies that just hunkered down, made indiscriminate cuts, and failed to invest during this period, because they'll capture most of the returns during that time. And then I think after that, I think we will come back to rethinking how do we improve the core processes of the organization and deal with some of the transformations we see in the broader marketplace. For example, e-commerce and technology isn't dead. In fact, if anything, it's been growing. And companies will constantly be challenged to adapt to a new world environment of both technology as well as demographics and economics. So I think, CFOs obviously in the short run have to deal with the issues that confront them around costs and capital. But they cannot lose sight of the new futures that are enabled by technology, changing demographics, and the changing economics of cost of capital.